My name is Don Richards and I'm the spokesperson for Positive Money New Zealand. We're an enterprise committed to having a monetary system that works for everyone. Now, Positive Money New Zealand is aligned to Positive Money UK and Positive Money Europe. And I'd like to begin by thanking Jamie for sponsoring the event and also to Dr. David Wilson for accepting our petition. Now, we all know that decades of underinvestment have left core infrastructure, transport, energy, water, strained and increasingly unfit for purpose. At the same time, fiscal constraints and rising debt servicing costs have made it difficult to fund the transformational upgrades this country urgently needs. Positive Money New Zealand has a solution that is the subject of a petition before the Finance and Expenditure Committee. We're asking for an inquiry into the Reserve Bank providing funding for infrastructure projects at zero or near to zero interest rates. This is called direct monetary financing. So rather than me, a stranger to most of you, explaining what we mean, we've compiled a clip featuring people you will likely know making the point for us. And then there'll be an opportunity for questions.
The banking sector in any society is one of the most powerful sectors of that economy because money is power. And if you can create money, you can create credit, then you have a massive amount of power.
This is the sort of dirty little secret, really, of the New Zealand monetary system, and in fact the monetary systems of just about everywhere in the world, that effectively money is created by banks. It's not created by the Reserve Bank, and it's not minted anywhere. It's actually created out of thin air, if you like, by the banks.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking banks don't print money. The government prints the money. Or maybe the Reserve Bank. Well, that's what I thought too, but it turns out that we are all wrong.
Banks create huge volumes of money every day, out of nothing, largely being lent on mortgage.
It was like a light went on. Banks created money out of thin air.
Let's get our heads around how this works.
How money is created is typically in the process of banks making loans.
Let's pretend for a moment that I'm the bank. You want to buy a house that costs $500,000. You'll need to give me $50,000 as a deposit.
So I need $450,000 from you.
That's right. So where am I going to get the money from? I just go into...
Because you obviously don't have it.
No, that's
Okay.
right. I just type in 450.
You've just made $450,000 out of absolutely nowhere.
That's right.
You take that money, that loan, and pay the proceeds to the person who sold you the house. They put the money in their account. It's a loan for you. It's a deposit for them.
Bingo, new money is created.
That I now have to pay interest on.
That's right.
But it feels a bit like a trick.
And the supply of that money grows quite a bit faster actually at the moment than the entire size of the economy.
This is an International Monetary Fund document that backs up what we've just told you. See this? Banks are almost fully in control of the money creation process.
Got it all hinged together. We're here in Wellington to hand over a petition to Parliament asking them to consider using the Reserve Bank to finance infrastructure at zero or near to zero interest rates.
Are you advocating that governments print money?
Absolutely, but in limited quantities.
Former London banker Raf Manji, former colleague of John Key.
The thing about the government is that they can issue the money supply interest-free. So, for example, for an infrastructure project that needs say $1 billion, the government can actually issue that directly into circulation. There's no interest charge. If the banks issued that into circulation, it would come with interest. Why should we be paying interest to fund public infrastructure projects when we don't need to?
Are we running this country for the benefit of banks or for the benefit of people?
This has been done before in New Zealand and it was very successful. We built tens of thousands of state houses and it's been done overseas with equal success.
What's the catch? Why has it not been used since?
There's no good reason why we can't do direct monetary financing now.
Also, as far as inflation's concerned, it's not the source of the money that's inflationary, it's where it's spent in the economy. So if there's capacity in the economy where the money's being spent, it won't be inflationary. Direct monetary finance will provide us with the tools to prosper. Questions?
When can we do it?
So how does this differ from the old social credit model?
With social credit, they were talking about going beyond infrastructure. They were talking about it funding all manner of things. We're very cautious. We want to stay focused on, like the clip says, we need to be sure of where we're spending that money. And if there's capacity in the infrastructure area, then that will not be inflationary. With social credit, they were opening up the conversation to all sorts of spending.
We're more on the capital side. Social credit was dealing with day-to-day expenses as well, which can be more inflationary.
Has it been done anywhere else in the world?
We did it in the 30s. The first Labor government used money from the Reserve Bank to build tens of thousands of state houses. In fact, right up until the 1980s, the Reserve Bank provided the Dairy Board with a line of credit. Martin, how much money was spent over time?
In today's dollars, it would be about $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion with a B, which essentially built an export dairy industry, became a significant part of Fonterra. And that was monetary finance from the Reserve Bank starting in the 30s, as it was with other producer boards, for example, that got their kickstart back in those days.
And the Chinese are using it to great effect. We're not playing on a level playing field.
Well, I would just say that a lot of the magic of the Chinese economy, the Chinese miracle, a lot of it is about banking. And they initially started, I think, with one bank. And they had many, many thousands of banks, and that's what opened up their economy.
They use public finance. A vast amount of it is distributed through what they call policy banks, which are like public banks. So essentially, they're a bank that's given a charter to go and build an industry or to build physical infrastructure. Those public banks are using public money to generate lending into commercial ventures. Right? You're not directly putting public money into the commercial ventures. You've got a bank. That bank is issuing loans that support the charter. So I think that approach, which we've used, which Japan used, which South Korea used, which China learned from those countries, is what's been a large part of their success.
Cliff, you had a manufacturing plant in China for a while, is that right?
We've got a branch in China. My business is a manufacturing plant in Auckland. And we've got a branch in China. It was interesting when we set that branch up. It gives you an idea of how the money's guided. When we went to start our branch, we wanted to go borrow some money to set up just an overdraft so we could start trading. And they said, no, sorry, we don't like the kind of business you do. If you're this type of, if you're a semiconductor business, you could get money, or if you're this type of business. So it was about infrastructure development.
What legislative changes would be needed if we were to do something like that?
Well, there's nothing that stops us from doing it right now.
Okay. So you would need to change the
Are you
Reserve
sure
Bank?
there's nothing in the Public Finance Act
Yes.
or, and I was going to ask a similar question, but also about like any of our international trade deals that might cause us to be sued by other investors from overseas who would say they don't have the opportunity to invest in that infrastructure at a profit if the government does. I'm not sure if that's...
Well, I'm not aware of the international obligations we have. I'm just aware of the legislative process.
I think you guys had an interesting point. Would foreign direct investment see this as competition?
I mean, China's been doing that for years. Maybe we're small enough to bully. Morgan, do you have any comment?
Well, it would depend on whether it was a subsidy or not, whether it was perceived to be as such, because then the WTO would go, or some under the appellate body would go, a second, it appears to be a subsidy. With regard to the Public Finance Act, public finance or public expenditure in this way stopped being legislated under the Public Finance Act 1989. The constraints upon public finance are ideological, rather than actually anything kind of procedural. Exactly.
There's no legislative barriers.
No.
But presumably within the Reserve Bank and Treasury, there'd be a lot of pushback and people arguing that the sky
That is where the
falls.
ideology comes in.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
And they would run a campaign maybe to discredit anyone advocating for this.
Well, I'd hope they wouldn't
You'd
do
be
that.
surprised. Seriously.
What's that?
You'd be surprised.
I believe
Yeah?
there are camps.
Yeah, well, I mean, turn the cameras off. We're not had conversations with those people. They understand that the state is self-financing.
Yeah.
Because here we're talking about settlement cash, we're talking rather than commercial bank deposits, which is where the legislation, funnily enough, kind of sits. It sits with the Crown Bank account, which is Westpac government branch, which isn't actually government spending or where it's sourced from, which is the Crown settlement account. So they kind of understand at least certain parts of the Reserve Bank and Treasury, begrudgingly so, I might add, understand that state is self-financing. These are very, albeit very important parts of Reserve Bank and Treasury. They're kind of, shushed or, those kind of thoughts are very much dissuaded. So much so, actually, that when you talk to people that actually that have worked in public finance and Treasury, when you ask them, what's the Crown settlement account, they've got no idea. But yet that's the source of the public core Crown expenditure.
Just a couple of quick observations. There will always be risk with the international trade agreements because basically we pass some sovereignty over to the World Trade Organization in signing them. And yeah, there might be challenges, but hopefully not too bad. Secondly, it is a question of sovereignty. It's a question of New Zealand having control over its money. We gave it away to commercial banks, which are now being owned by Australia. And in this case, in a very nice, narrow, strong case, we would be taking that sovereignty back and just saying, we will issue the money that is necessary to build this infrastructure. That money will disappear into the system. We won't even notice it unless we spend more than like 200 billion a year. But there's nothing stopping the government simply issuing the money it needs to build infrastructure.
Okay, so Bruce, just explain a bit of your background. You work for the Reserve Bank?
I had a long career with the Auditor General and with the Reserve Bank. As governments can spend money into existence, the only problem is how that money is used. And if it's used where there's capacity in the economy, as you guys so clearly say, it creates wealth. It creates wealth for the private sector. It creates wealth into the country.
And to rip off Bruce here, recall that an Appropriation Act or an Increase in Supply Act, for the nerds, that is a legislative instrument to create money. Essentially, it legislates the expenditure of government money. That's its whole point. That's the point, arguably, some would say, some politics scholars would say that's the point of Parliament, not government.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's the institutional settings, and in fact our petition is geared up to exactly this point, that the money issuing power of government is there, it's indisputable. People like Morgan have spent a long time actually in the weeds proving that's where it comes from. But to use it for purposes like infrastructure, we need to get those institutional settings right. And is it Parliament, is it the Executive, is it some other, is it a Minister of Finance or whatever? Who makes the decisions about the quantum and where it goes? That's the political decision that you guys have got to make, knowing that the capability is there.
We're suggesting that initially it's used in parallel with existing funding sources. We're saying start small and grow bigger. And we're asking for an inquiry. We're not saying scrap the bond market, we're not going to borrow, but we're going to start building up our sovereignty, we're going to start building up our muscle around spending and creating the money ourselves via the Reserve Bank.
If you were given the opportunity to have a pilot of this, what infrastructure would be targeted and what kind of numbers?
We're looking at, say, something small.
And what would you pick first? How about some new pipes so we don't have sewage flowing into the sea?
What about electrifying the rail network?
That's the beauty of it. You can use it for anything, and it's a political decision, right? It's simply a tool.
That's right, so long as there's capacity in the area you're spending it.
The Infrastructure Commission has produced a prioritised list of significant projects. So our suggestion is we start with that. Parliament signs off on the big picture, the quantum, the qualifying projects based on something like that independent advice. Maybe that's 20 billion, maybe that's spent over a 10-year period, so the Reserve Bank is able to know and plan for that amount of publicly generated money. It's a totally transparent process.
Yeah, and I guess if we're buying stuff from overseas, then the inflationary impact would be low. I guess if you're spending lots of money on labor and you're bidding up the cost of labor here in civil engineering, that might be an issue, in horizontal or vertical.
You're talking about bidding up the cost of labor and whatnot. That's why we make the point it's important to direct it where there is capacity. And if you set out a long-term infrastructure pipeline like the Infrastructure Commission's doing, it can be planned, and though that capacity can be built over time. And we can get
funding
productive.
certainty.
Funding certainty, yeah, that's it.
Regional planning, right? Because inflation can break out in a region, right? So again, that can be part of the process to have, and that's a tool that can be used to stamp down inflation in a region, without having to whack everyone's mortgages across the whole country.
And resources properly spaced too, rather than a project coming to an end and then they all shoot through because there's no more work to do. They go to Australia or somewhere. Well, that's just crazy. Why not keep them here, have the resource planning going right through?
So what would be the anticipated impact on the currency, because you're essentially debasing it?
You're debasing it if you create too much money, and particularly for the wrong things, right? If, for example, you're creating money and that money is going into infrastructure, human capital and physical infrastructure, I would have thought like a ratings agency would be saying, hallelujah, New Zealand is going to improve its productivity and it's going to be a much stronger country as a result of that. If the money was going somewhere profligate, that's a different thing. So your currency will be as strong as your economy. There's other factors that come into it, but over the long run, that's where it should sit. That's part of the balancing act, and that's part of giving the Reserve Bank and the Treasury multiple tools, tax bonds, different types of bonds, infrastructure bonds maybe aimed at the local KiwiSaver funds or whatever.
It's also a great way to boost GDP. I mean, it goes directly into infrastructure. The economy is then seen to be a healthy economy that's growing. One of the great ways to grow the economy is to grow the infrastructure. So then that means that our transport is more efficient. Electricity prices are cheaper. And so there's a big flow-on effect there.
Yeah, private enterprise can base it.
Yeah, that's right. It provides the springboard for private enterprise to flourish.
Yeah. Well done, Doug.